I thought my brother had given me the worst seat on the plane. Then the captain called me General. Seconds later, I discovered the flight was being remotely controlled. My brother was being held somewhere underground, and a woman who was supposed to have died 22 years ago appeared on a screen and said she was my mother. Then I saw a name on the navigation system that I had never heard before. Alara Ricci. I don't remember having a sister, but somehow I remembered her voice. If you were in my seat, would you trust your brother or the captain? Tell me in the comments and subscribe if you want to hear what happened next. I knew something was wrong when my brother smiled before handing me my plane ticket. Milo Ricci had always smiled when he was nervous. I had known him for 49 years, long enough to recognize the difference between his ordinary smile and the one he used when he wanted me to stop asking questions. We were standing beneath the departure board at Marseille Provence Airport on a gray Saturday morning in early October. I was 58, recently retired from the Italian Armed Forces, and traveling to Athens for a quiet 3-day conference on disaster response. Milo was supposed to travel with me. Instead, he held out a single paper ticket. "Here," he said. I took it. Economy. The only seat left. I looked at his boarding pass. Business class. Seat 4D. You booked yours weeks ago. I got lucky. You don't get lucky with airline tickets. His smile faded for half a second. Olivia, it's a 6-hour flight. Survive it. He kissed my cheek and walked toward the priority lounge. I watched him disappear behind the glass doors. My name is Olivia Ricci. I spent 32 years in military logistics and crisis operations. One rule stayed with me. When someone gives an easy explanation too quickly, ask what they are hiding. I looked down at my ticket again. AZ 418. Marseille to Athens. Seat 27A. At the bottom corner was a small black triangle drawn in ink. I had seen that symbol 22 years earlier on a classified file connected to Operation Bellflower. The file had been sealed, and the operation had officially ended without civilian casualties. I knew that was not the whole truth. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I opened the message. Do not change seats. And do not tell your brother. I looked toward the lounge. Milo was no longer visible. I called him. He answered immediately. Who put the triangle on my ticket? Silence. Milo. Where are you? At the gate. Good. That's not an answer. Get on the plane, Olivia. Why? Because if you don't, they'll know I failed. The call ended. A woman was watching me from beside a coffee kiosk. She wore a gray airport uniform and had short copper-colored hair. A thin scar ran from the corner of her left eyebrow toward her temple. She walked directly toward me. General Ricci? Nobody at the airport had a reason to call me that. I think you have the wrong person. No. She slipped a folded card into my hand. Read it somewhere private. Then she walked away. The card contained one sentence. Your brother is not the person you need to fear. I noticed writing on the other side. But he knows why they chose you. My phone rang. Milo. This time I answered without speaking. Olivia, listen carefully. Start explaining. I can't. You were never supposed to receive that ticket. I stared at the card. Then who is it for? Another silence. Olivia, board the flight. The call ended again. At the scanner, the agent tried my ticket. Rejected. A supervisor approached and checked the screen. His expression changed. Ms. Ricci, could you come with me? Why? He lowered his voice. This reservation was created using a military clearance code. I didn't use one. I know. Then cancel it. He looked uncomfortable. I can't. Why not? He turned the monitor toward me. The reservation had been marked with a red authorization code. Bellflower. My stomach tightened. Who authorized this? The supervisor looked at me. You did. I almost laughed. I retired 7 years ago. I understand. I have never seen this reservation. That's why I'm asking you to board. A boarding announcement sounded overhead. I looked toward the aircraft, then toward the lounge. Milo appeared behind the glass. He was watching me. He did not wave. I lifted my ticket. He closed his eyes. That was when I knew he had lied about more than my seat. The cabin door closed. I reached 27A. A woman was already sitting in 27B. Dark hair, navy sweater, no luggage. She looked at my ticket. Olivia Ricci? Yes. My name is Nara Vass. How do you know me? I know what you're carrying. You don't have to tell me. She glanced toward the rear of the cabin. Don't look at the man in 31C. I looked anyway. He wore a gray suit and had no luggage. He was holding his wristwatch, staring at it as if waiting for a specific time. He looked directly at me, then smiled. Nara whispered, "You shouldn't have looked." "Who is he?" "I don't know. You just told me not to look at him. Because someone told me not to." "Who?" She placed a small metal cylinder in my palm. It was cold and heavier than it looked. "What is this?" "The reason you're on this aircraft." I turned it over. No markings. Nara leaned closer. 20 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft will change course. Why? Because someone else is controlling it. I looked at her. Are you saying this plane is being hijacked? No. She swallowed. I'm saying the hijacking already happened before we boarded. I looked toward the cockpit. My phone vibrated again. This time the message came from Milo. "I'm sorry." I typed back. "For what?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. A minute passed. No answer. The engine started. Nara watched the cockpit door. The person controlling this aircraft doesn't want money. What does he want? He wants you. The aircraft lifted into the morning sky. Then the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flight AZ-418. A pause. "General Ricci, please remain in your seat." The passengers turned. Nara went pale. And from the cockpit came a second voice. My brother's voice. "Olivia, don't trust the captain." The cockpit door opened before I could stand. A flight attendant stepped into the aisle and raised one hand. "Please remain seated." Nobody moved. My brother's voice was still in my head. "Don't trust the captain." I looked at Nara. She had gone completely still. "Who is the captain?" I whispered. "Captain Adrian Vale." "Do you know him?" "No." The answer came too quickly. I watched her face. "You're lying." She looked toward the front of the aircraft. "I know his name." That wasn't my question. The aircraft climbed through a layer of cloud. Passengers returned to their phones, unaware anything unusual had happened. I stood. The flight attendant blocked the aisle. "Ma'am, please sit down." I showed her my military identification. "I need to speak with the captain." Her eyes dropped to the card. Then she looked at me differently. "General Ricci, I was instructed to bring you to the cockpit." "By whom?" "Captain Vale." I walked toward the cockpit. Before I reached the door, it opened. A man in a white uniform stood there. Captain Adrian Vale was in his mid-40s, with dark hair and tired eyes. "General." I stepped inside. The first officer was not Milo. My brother was gone. "Where is my brother?" Captain Vale closed the cockpit door. "He was never assigned to this flight. That is impossible." He pointed toward the co-pilot seat. "There is no First Officer Ricci on my manifest." My phone vibrated. A photograph had arrived. It showed Milo sitting in the cockpit of another aircraft. The date was 3 days earlier. Under it was a message. "Your brother boarded this flight before you did." I looked at the captain. "Who sent this?" "I don't know." "Then why call me General?" His expression changed. "I didn't." "You did." "No." "Someone used my cabin announcement." He turned his monitor toward me. A remote command was controlling the aircraft's navigation. Our route had changed. We were heading south. Not toward Athens. Toward the Mediterranean. "Can you override it?" "Not from here." "Can you land?" "Not without following the remote route. Then shut down the system." "I can't. The aircraft will lose navigation and communications." I looked at the instruments. "Who has access?" An emergency defense interface was installed during a government security program. "Which program?" "Project Meridian." I knew the name. It had been abandoned before completion. "Who designed it?" Captain Vale hesitated. "Cashin Vey." My stomach tightened. Cashin had once been the director of strategic aviation security. He had argued for centralized remote control of civilian aircraft. I had rejected the proposal. Too much authority. Too little oversight. The program disappeared. So did Cashin. A countdown appeared on the console. 1742. What happens at 0? The captain looked at me. I don't know. I returned to the cabin. Nara was waiting. You heard us, I said. She didn't deny it. Who is Cashin Vey? She looked down. You shouldn't say his name. Why? Because he can hear this aircraft. I glanced at the speakers. That isn't possible. Nara opened the metal cylinder. Inside was a tiny, encrypted device. This is a navigation key. Cashin needs it to complete the route. You have it? Yes. Then why hasn't he taken it? Because he needs me alive. And me. She looked at me. He needs you to authorize the landing. Where are we going? She took out a folded map. A red circle marked a small island south of Greece. I recognized it. An old military station. It was abandoned. 20 years ago. 3 weeks ago, power was restored. My phone vibrated again. This time it was a video. Milo appeared on screen. He was sitting in a dark room, his hands tied behind him. His face was bruised. Olivia, if you're seeing this, don't come to the island. The video cut. A second clip began. Whatever they tell you about Bellflower, don't believe it. Then the screen went black. I replayed it. There was a green emergency light behind him, a metal door, and a clock showing 14:20. I checked my watch. 11:03. The video had been recorded 3 hours in the future. I looked at Nara. That isn't live. No. Then someone sent me a warning before it happened. She shook her head. Not before. Then when? She stared at the screen. After. The aircraft suddenly banked hard. Passengers screamed. The captain's voice came through the cabin. Remain seated. I looked at the flight map. Our altitude was falling. Nara gripped my arm. The remote system has taken full control. How long? 16 minutes. Until what? She looked at me. Until we reached the island. A man stood near the rear exit. It was the passenger from 31C. He opened a black case. Inside was a handgun. I moved into the aisle. He saw me. General Ricci. I kept my voice calm. Put it down. He raised the weapon. The cabin erupted. Before he could fire, someone struck him from behind. The woman with the copper-colored hair, the airport employee who had given me the warning card, stood behind him. She kicked the weapon beneath the seat. Then she looked at me. Olivia, we need to talk. Who are you? My name is Saren Vale. Captain Vale's daughter. She lowered her voice. And my father is not controlling this aircraft. I looked toward the cockpit. He was staring at us. Saren continued. The person controlling it is sitting 3 rows behind you. I turned. The passenger in 31C was no longer the threat. The woman in 27B was gone. Nara had disappeared. In her empty seat was another black triangle. I picked it up. There was writing underneath. You have 7 minutes to find the traitor. Then the cabin lights went out. I heard the emergency locks click behind me. Saren, I whispered. How do you know there's a traitor? She looked toward the darkened cabin. Because I saw him enter the aircraft. Who? Her answer came softly. The person who gave your brother the ticket. Then something moved behind us. A hand reached for my shoulder. I turned. The hand on my shoulder belonged to an elderly man in a navy jacket. He looked terrified, not dangerous. Please, he whispered. Don't turn around. I pulled away. Why? Because he is watching you. Who? The emergency lights flickered back on. Every passenger was looking toward the aisle. The man in 31C was gone. So was the woman who had been sitting beside me. Nara. I turned to Saren. Where did she go? She was never in 27B. I stared at her. I spoke to her. You're saying she wasn't a passenger? Saren shook her head. She was working with them. The elderly man beside us grabbed my sleeve. She took something from the cockpit. What? He looked at the ceiling camera. The flight recorder. I glanced at the cockpit door. Captain Vale was standing inside, holding a fire extinguisher. "Everyone stay seated," he shouted. A passenger screamed, "We're being hijacked." "No," the captain replied. "We're being redirected." I moved toward him. "What did Nara take?" His face tightened. "The original navigation key." "You told me she had the emergency key." "She had a copy." "Then where's the original?" He pointed toward the floor. A panel beside the cockpit entrance was open. The original was installed in this aircraft before departure. I looked at Saren. "You knew?" "Yes. And you let me believe Nara was helping me. I needed you to trust her. That was a dangerous game." "So, is everything happening on this flight?" A sharp alarm sounded. The captain looked at his instruments. "We have 7 minutes." Until? "Until the aircraft reaches the restricted corridor." "What happens there?" "Military interception." The cabin became silent. "If they intercept us, we will be treated as a hostile aircraft." I stared at the route map. "Then we have 7 minutes to stop the plane." I turned to Saren. "Where's Nara?" "I don't know." "Who gave Milo the ticket?" She hesitated. "That wasn't Milo's decision." "Whose was it?" "Cashin Vey." The name changed everything. I had spent years believing Cashin was dangerous because of his obsession with control. But now someone had placed me on an aircraft, erased a passenger from the manifest, planted a fake military authorization, and used my brother as bait. This was not a hijacking. It was an operation. And I was the target. My phone rang. "Milo." I answered. "Where are you?" His breathing was heavy. "Olivia, listen to me. I don't have much time." "Who took you?" "Don't ask me that." "Are you on the island?"
No.
"Then where?" "Under the airport." I froze.
What?
"There is an old military transit tunnel beneath Marseille province. They moved me there before you boarded."
Who?
Milo whispered a name. "Lucien." The call ended. Lucien Orsatti had been my commanding mentor during my first decade in service. He had retired 20 years ago. According to every record I had seen, he died 6 years later. I looked at Saren. "Lucien Orsatti is alive." She did not answer. "Saren." "He is." "How long have you known?" 3 weeks. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know if you were part of it." "You thought I was involved?" "I thought someone had altered your memories."
My mouth went dry.
"What memories?" "Bellflower." 22 years earlier, Operation Bellflower had been my most controversial mission. I had been injured during the operation. 3 days of my memory were missing. The official explanation was trauma. Saren reached into her jacket. She pulled out a medical photograph. It showed me lying unconscious in a military hospital. And 4 was attached to my arm. "Look at the date," she said.
I did.
The day after Bellflower. Then I noticed something else. A man stood beside my hospital bed. Lucien. He was younger, wearing his old uniform. His hand rested on the 4 line. I stared at the image. "I don't remember this." "You weren't supposed to." The aircraft shook again. The captain shouted, "Brace." The nose dipped. The navigation system displayed a new command. Altitude, 9,000 feet. Then, altitude, 8,000. The captain pulled back.
The controls resisted.
"Someone is fighting me," he said. I took the emergency handset. "Can you cut the remote system?" "Not from here. Give me access."
He looked at me.
"You're not a pilot."
No.
"But I know command systems." He moved aside. The interface required a 6-digit military authorization. I entered my old command code. Rejected. I tried again. Rejected. Saren watched. "Your code was changed." "By whom?" "Lucien." I remembered something. A phrase from an old briefing. Not a password. A command sequence. I entered it. The system unlocked. A hidden folder appeared. Bellflower/authority transfer. I opened it. A recording began. My younger voice filled the cockpit. If this recording is being accessed, then I was unable to complete the transfer. I stared at the screen. My younger self continued. "The person responsible for Bellflower is not an enemy officer." The recording paused. Then my voice said something that made my hands go cold. It is someone inside my own command. The screen went black. Captain Vale looked at me. General, did you know about this? No. The aircraft leveled. Then another file opened automatically. A photograph appeared. It showed 4 people standing together 22 years earlier.
Me.
Lucian, Cashin, and a 4th person whose face had been scratched out. Below the image was a single line. One of them will betray the others. Saren stepped closer. That's impossible.
Why?
Because I know who the 4th person was. I looked at her. She pointed to the damaged face. That was my mother. I had never met Cashin's wife. She had been reported dead before Cashin disappeared. Saren's voice shook. She didn't die in an accident. The cockpit display showed a new destination. Not the island. Not Athens. Marseille. And beneath it appeared one final message. Land here if you want your brother to live. The message stayed on the screen for several seconds. Land here if you want your brother to live. I read it twice. Then I looked at Captain Vale. Can we land in Marseille?
He shook his head.
Not without restoring manual control. Then restore it. I told you, the remote system has control. I pointed at the screen. It just changed our destination. Someone wants us to go back. That doesn't mean we can. I turned to Saren. Your father designed this system. Yes. Then tell me how to break it. She looked at the controls. There is a physical override beneath the navigation console. Captain Vale opened the panel. Inside was a sealed metal box. He pulled it free. There was no keyhole, only a fingerprint scanner. I placed my hand against it. Nothing happened. Saren stepped forward. Try your other hand. I did. The scanner unlocked. The box opened. Inside was a military access card bearing my name. I stared at it. I never had this. Saren picked it up. You did. When? 22 years ago. The aircraft jolted. The card slipped from her fingers. I caught it. A small photograph was attached to the back. It showed me standing beside Lucian. He was smiling. I wasn't. I remembered the photograph. Or thought I did. It had been taken before Bellflower. But the date printed beneath it was 3 days after the operation. My memory had been wrong again. I looked at Saren. Someone changed the archive. Yes.
Who?
She hesitated. Your brother. The words hit harder than the aircraft's movement. Milo. He accessed the military archive 6 months ago. Why? To remove your name from a list. What list? She took out her phone and showed me a document. 22 names. Most were officers. Some were government officials. Several were dead. Beside each name was a status. At the top was mine. Subject: Olivia Ricci. Status: memory incomplete. Under it: recovery event expected, 2026. I looked at the date. This year. What is a recovery event? Saren answered quietly. When you remember. The aircraft began descending. Captain Vale checked the altitude. Someone has lowered us to 12,000 feet. Are we still heading toward Marseille? Yes. I looked at the route. A second line had appeared beneath the destination. Airport under control. My blood went cold. If we land, who receives us? Saren looked at me. Lucian. The cabin speakers crackled. A man's voice came through. Good morning, Olivia. I knew the voice. I had heard it in command rooms, hospitals, and briefing halls. For 22 years, I had believed I would never hear it again. Lucian Orsatti. Still following instructions, he said. I took the handset. Where is my brother? Alive. Put him on. A pause. Then Milo spoke. Live, don't land. Lucian cut him off. You have 6 minutes. I gripped the handset. What do you want? You already know.
No.
I know what you want me to think. He laughed. That is why you were always my best officer. You drugged me. Silence. You remember? Not everything. That is unfortunate. You used my credentials to authorize Bellflower. I used your authority. You murdered civilians. I prevented a larger war. I looked at Saren. Her face had gone pale. Lucian continued. You were never supposed to survive the operation. Then why did I? Because Cashin interfered. The aircraft shook. Captain Vale shouted, "We're losing altitude." The navigation screen flashed red. Remote override. Secondary. Lucien spoke calmly. "You have 3 minutes." I answered. "For what?" "To decide whether your brother lives." The transmission ended. I turned toward the cockpit door. A passenger was standing there. The elderly man who had warned me earlier. He was holding a small black case. "General," he said, "I think I can help." I looked at him. "Who are you?" He removed his jacket. Underneath was an old military uniform. His insignia was faded, but I recognized the unit. Bellflower. I stepped back. That unit was dissolved.
"So was I," he said.
"What is your name?" "Dario Kess." The name meant nothing. Then he showed me his identification. My hands went cold. He had been listed as killed during Bellflower. Dario looked at the navigation screen. "Lucien doesn't control the aircraft. Then who does?" He looked at Saren. She lowered her eyes. Her. I stared at Saren. She shook her head.
"No."
Dario pointed at the metal cylinder in her hand. "That key doesn't just receive commands." Saren backed away. "It can't. It can." I looked between them. "What is happening?" Dario answered. "The aircraft is not being controlled from the ground." He pointed at the passenger cabin. "The command is coming from inside." Everyone went silent. I remembered the empty seat, the missing passenger, the black triangle. Then I remembered the man in 31C. He had not disappeared. He had moved. I ran toward the rear of the aircraft. The lavatory door was locked. I knocked. "Open it." Nothing. I stepped back and kicked it. The door opened. Inside was Nara. She was unconscious. Beside her was the original navigation key. And on the wall, written in black marker, was a name. Milo Ricci. I stared at it. For the first time since boarding, I stopped asking whether my brother had lied to me. I started asking whether he had ever been on my side at all. "Behind me," Saren shouted. "Olivia." I turned. She was holding her phone. A live video had appeared. Milo was standing in a dark underground room. Lucien stood behind him. But there was another person in the room. A woman. She turned toward the camera. I recognized her immediately. The woman in the photograph. Cashin's wife. The woman everyone believed had died 22 years ago. She looked directly at me. And she said 4 words. "Olivia, I am your mother." The woman on the screen said she was my mother. My mother had died when I was 11. I remembered her funeral, the black dress, and Lucien standing beside my father telling me grief would eventually become strength. Now a woman who looked exactly like the photographs in our family albums stood beside Lucien. She was older, thinner, and had gray hair. But her eyes were the same. "Who are you?" I asked. "Alessandra Ricci. My mother's name." I looked at Saren. "You knew?"
"No."
"I knew she was alive. I didn't know she was your mother." The screen changed. Milo stepped into view. He looked exhausted, but there was no blood on his face. "Olivia, listen to me." I moved closer. "Start talking." "I found her 6 months ago." "Where?" "Under the old military archives." My voice hardened. "You found our mother alive and didn't tell me?" "I couldn't." "You could have called." "I did." I froze. "When?" "Every Sunday." I remembered the unknown calls. Someone breathing on the other end. Milo continued. I couldn't speak because Lucien was listening. Lucien stepped closer to the camera. "You are wasting time." I ignored him. "Milo, why put me on this aircraft?" "Because you're the only person who can unlock the Bellflower archive." I looked at the access card. "That's why my fingerprint worked." "Yes." "What is in the archive?" My mother answered. "The truth about what happened after the operation." Captain Vale shouted, 2 minutes before the restricted corridor. The route was still heading toward Marseille. "Can you take control?" Milo nodded. "I can, but only if you activate the card." "From where?" "Your seat." I returned to 27A. Beneath the cushion was a narrow slot. I inserted the card. A hidden display appeared. Authorization required. Then a question. Who gave the order? 4 names appeared. Lucien Orsatti, Cashin Vey, Alessandra Ricci, Olivia Ricci. I looked at my mother. Which one? She shook her head. Don't choose. What? That's the test. Lucien laughed. She was always clever. My mother turned toward him. And you were always arrogant. He looked at her. You should have stayed dead. The words made the cabin silent. My mother's death had been staged. Bellflower had continued through our family. A new message appeared. The person who gave the order was never on the list. Lucien smiled. Then the aircraft lights went dark. Emergency lights flashed. Captain Vale shouted, "We have lost both engines." Passengers screamed. I grabbed the seat. Why would both engines fail? Dario Kess answered from behind me. Someone disabled the fuel valves. Can you restore them? Maybe. How long? 4 minutes. We have less than 2. Dario opened his case and moved toward the service panel. Saren followed. I turned back toward the screen. Milo was shouting, "Olivia, don't land." I'm not planning to. Then what are you doing? Finding another way. My mother stepped toward the camera. Olivia, listen carefully. I am. The person who ordered Bellflower is on the aircraft. I looked around at the passengers, the captain, Saren, Dario, Nera, and myself. My mother continued. He has been watching you since Marseille. I looked toward the rear. The elderly man who had warned me earlier was standing beside Dario. I noticed his jacket had changed. Under it was a flight engineer's uniform. I walked toward him. Your name? Marcel. Full name? He hesitated. Marcel Orsatti. Lucien's brother. I raised my weapon. Marcel slowly raised his hands. I didn't do this. Then why were you hiding your identity? Because Lucien killed everyone who knew about Bellflower. You were presumed dead. Yes. Why were you on this flight? To protect you. I lowered the weapon slightly. From whom? He looked toward the cockpit. From the man sitting beside your brother. My mother suddenly shouted from the screen. Olivia, the video cut. The cockpit door opened. Captain Vale stepped into the cabin holding a weapon. Everyone stay seated. I stared at him. You're working for Lucien.
He shook his head. No.
Then put the gun down. I can't. Why? Because if I do, they kill my daughter. Saren froze.
Dad.
Captain Vale looked at her. I am sorry. The aircraft descended rapidly. The navigation display showed a new destination. Not Marseille or Athens. A military runway on the island. Lucien's voice came through the speakers. Now you understand, Olivia. I grabbed the handset. You threatened his daughter. Yes. You threatened Milo. Yes. You kept my mother alive. Yes. Why? Lucien answered. Because your mother knows what you did. What I did. My mother looked terrified. Lucien smiled. Ask her. The screen came back. My mother was crying. Olivia, she whispered. I tried to protect you. From what? You didn't sign the Bellflower order. I know. You didn't authorize the operation. I know. You weren't drugged because you were a witness. Then why? My mother looked directly into the camera. Because you were the one who gave the order. I stared at her. That isn't possible. You were 16. Then she continued. Bellflower wasn't a military operation when it began. What was it? A rescue mission. She closed her eyes. You were there. The memory came back in fragments. A younger version of me. A military vehicle. A burning warehouse. A child crying. And my own voice saying one sentence. Get them out. The memory was real, but it wasn't mine. It belonged to a girl who looked exactly like me. My mother whispered. You had a twin sister. The aircraft suddenly dropped again. The captain shouted. We're going down. And on the navigation screen, a final identity appeared. Passenger 27A, Olivia Ricci. Then beneath it, second identity, Alara Ricci. I stared at the name. I had never heard it before. But somewhere inside me, a memory answered. I knew her. I knew her. That was the worst part. The name Alara did not feel unfamiliar. I closed my eyes, and the aircraft disappeared. A girl stood in front of me. Same dark hair. Same green eyes. Younger than I was now, but old enough to understand fear. Don't let them take the children, she said. Then the memory vanished. Captain Vale was fighting the controls. General, we have less than a minute. I looked at the navigation screen. 2 identities were displayed under 1 passenger number. Olivia Ricci. Alara Ricci. They didn't put a second person on the plane. Saren stared at the screen.
No.
They put your old identity into the system. Bellflower wasn't erased, Dario said. It was reassigned. I turned toward the screen. My mother was still there. Tell me everything. She took a breath. 22 years ago, Bellflower was a civilian evacuation. Your unit discovered children being held inside a weapons warehouse. Lucien had been using it as a transfer point for illegal weapons. Why were the children there? They were witnesses. I remembered smoke, shouting, and Alara beside me. My mother continued. You and Alara were separated when you were children. Your father kept her existence secret because Lucien threatened our family. Why don't I remember having a twin? Because Lucien altered your memory after Bellflower. Why? You and Alara saw him order the warehouse destroyed. I looked at Lucien. You killed those children. I protected the state. You protected yourself. He smiled. That distinction is irrelevant now.
No.
It is the only thing that matters. The aircraft descended. Captain Vale shouted, We have manual control for 10 seconds. Can you land? Not safely. Do it anyway. I gave him the old military descent pattern. The aircraft hit hard, lost its first landing gear, veered left, and stopped beside the terminal. Passengers evacuated. Then my phone rang. Milo, where are you? The underground station. What about my mother? She is here. I froze. You're not watching a live transmission, he said. The video was recorded 2 years ago. Then where is she? With me. I ran into the terminal. Milo was waiting beside an elderly woman in a gray coat. I knew her face from old photographs. Mom, she smiled. Yes. I wanted to hug her, but asked, Where's Alara? Her smile disappeared. She died at Bellflower.
No.
She was the girl you remembered. The memory returned. Alara holding my hand, smoke filling the warehouse, my voice ordering soldiers to evacuate, then an explosion. You survived, my mother said. What happened to her? She went back for the children. I looked at Milo. You knew? Yes. You knew all of this? I learned it 6 months ago. For 22 years, I thought my missing memories contained guilt. They contained grief. Then Lucien entered the terminal. He was older, but unmistakable. You finally remembered. I raised my gun. Milo stepped between us. Don't. Lucien smiled. You still protect him? He protected me. He lied to you. I know. He helped Cashin. I know. Lucien looked at Milo. Then tell her what you did to her mother. Milo swallowed. I told Cashin where she was. Why? Because I thought Cashin could expose Lucien. You gave him leverage. Yes. His hands were shaking. He was finally telling the truth. Lucien stepped closer. All of this could have been avoided.
No.
You could have forgotten Bellflower. I tried. He smiled. You were always stubborn. And you were always predictable. I pointed toward the terminal cameras. You walked into a live evidence room. The cameras were recording. Dario entered with investigators. Lucien Ursati, you are under arrest. He looked at me. You planned this.
No.
You did. You threatened Milo, manipulated Cashin, used Captain Vale, and forced me into a decision. I stepped closer. But you made one mistake.
What?
You assumed I still needed to be controlled. They took him away. Outside, emergency vehicles arrived. The passengers were safe. Captain Vale gave a statement. Nera was arrested, and Cashin followed. Milo, my mother, and I testified. I told the court about Alara and how she went back into a burning warehouse because children were still inside. For 22 years, Lucien had erased her from the records. He failed. Months later, the Bellflower files were unsealed. 37 civilian deaths were acknowledged, and Alara Ricci was listed first on the memorial. My mother held my hand during the ceremony. I am sorry. I know. I should have told you. I know. Milo stood nearby. You still owe me a plane ticket. I'll buy business class.
No.
Economy. First class. He laughed. I looked at Alara's name. I once thought justice meant making the people who hurt me suffer. I was wrong. Justice meant making sure they could never erase their victims again. Lucien lost his freedom and reputation. Cashin lost his control. Nara lost her immunity. Captain Vale found courage to testify. Milo lost his life of silence, but gained his family back. I stopped blaming myself for a stolen memory. That was my karma. Not revenge. Not violence. The truth. The truth stayed. A year later, I boarded another flight with Milo. He handed me 2 tickets. I checked them. Economy. He grinned. Only 2 seats left. I laughed. The captain came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. No surprises? I asked. None, Milo said. The plane began moving. For the first time, I did not check the exits. I simply sat back. My name was Olivia Ricci. I had once been a general, a sister who forgot her twin, and a daughter who believed her mother was dead. Now, I was simply a woman who knew the truth. That was enough. If this story stayed with you, subscribe for more stories of family secrets, betrayal, justice, and survival. Sometimes the greatest victory is not defeating the person who betrayed you. It is remembering who you were before they made you forget.